Take a person, take a story, take you on a journey. It's your take.
On today's Your Take, I'm joined by a talented British singer who was born in Peru and moved to the West Country at a young age. My guest was influenced by her family's love of blues, country, folk, gospel, and Latin American music. She formed her first band at the age of 16 and went on to study music. Her debut solo album, Little Dreamer, was released in 2008, receiving critical acclaim from the music press and reaching number 6 in the UK album chart. My guest has gone on to release 2 further albums, perform across the globe, and on various television shows. Her music is featured in the films The Edge of Love and An Education. She's also collaborated with the popular Australian band Crowded House, singer Katie Melua, and the legendary songwriter Burt Bacharach. I'm delighted to talk to the talented musician Beth Rowley, who talks to Your Take about her early life, her love of music, and her plans for the future. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning from my home in Bristol, and I believe as well that you're a fellow Bristol resident like myself.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to talking to you about your love of music, about performance, recordings, and so on. But before we talk about your musical career, I kind of wanted to go back to the very beginning, to be honest, and talk about your early life. You were born in Lima in Peru, and you moved to Bristol at a young age, but I kind of wanted to ask you about your recollections of your childhood, and just tell us a bit of background about your parents and what they did for a living.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm back in Bristol. I'm currently sat in my bedroom in Easton. Yeah, it's nice to be back home again. Basically, I was in London for quite a while, so it's nice to I've been back in Bristol for a while now, and yeah, it feels really good to be back. But yeah, Bristol is like my hometown. So even though I was born in Peru, in Lima, was where my parents and my family were living at the time, I don't really have many memories of it because I was still very young when we came home. So from that point of view, I don't really miss any, I was too young to really form many, long-term memories, I guess, but it was a huge influence, I guess, on my early life, and music especially influences, because my parents were there for quite a long time. So they absorbed loads of the culture and the music, and our house and our upbringing basically was really influenced by Latin American culture, and big, like for me, music especially, and my dad, I'd say, is probably one of the key influences for me. He's just the biggest music fan. Like you meet people sometimes and they'll like, he would choose to just sit and listen to music over anything else, and he'll gravitate towards, he'll just watch documentaries about music. He like lives in, like, he's just so like, I go to him and say, what are you listening to at the moment, and he'll send me links, like YouTube links, like loads of, like especially old Americana music. He loves the kind of the Highwaymen, like Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson kind of era, and but old blues music and old gospel music, especially rootsy kind of music, so I grew up with all that kind of stuff, and I loved it at the time. I remember being really moved by it and thinking, this is awesome. It definitely influenced my appreciation for music and my decision to kind of, well, it was just there. It wasn't really a decision. I just always loved music. It's just part of the background. But his influence was a huge part of me deciding to pursue music as a vocation, a job, and and his encouragement, and mum and dad's encouragement, and my family as well. So yeah, they were very supportive. Yeah.
You mentioned about your dad being this music connoisseur and from a young age listening to a lot of roots music, but
Yeah.
kind of when did you decide to actually start performing music, and what kind of instruments did you begin playing, and from what sort of age?
Well, I didn't really have I think guitar, playing like 3 chords on guitar was what I did for years. And I can still probably only play like 5. But that's fine. And yeah, I was in a band at school. So I remember being in the common room with my mates or wherever we were. And I had some buddies who were like into playing drums and keys, and we said, oh, we should join a band, you know, we should form a band. So we did. We didn't really play many gigs, but we did lots of rehearsals, and we did lots of yeah, we had like about probably 10, 11, 12 songs that we had, and we recorded it. There was a couple of school CDs, like charity things that we did. And it was wicked. It was so good. We were called the Apogee. And yeah, it was awesome. I didn't realize how cool it was. Like looking back, I'm like, oh, that's so, I didn't realize like I was in a band with like my mates. I was like, I didn't really feel like I appreciated it quite as much at the time as now, because I was just having the best time. And it was a really special time, kind of working out what we wanted, and there was no pressure to do anything for anybody. There's no time limit, there was no manager, it was purely having fun and creating with people you just loved being in a room with, and like vibing off each other, and we'd just be in there for hours, and they'd all be smoking, and I'm sure my mum and dad used to think when I came out of the room, oh, you're only like 16, but they were all they were all good lads, just liked a little smoke from time to time. But it was wicked, yeah. And then I started kind of doing open mic nights around Bristol, and I went to Weston College, where I took a gap year. First of all, I went to Thailand and Australia with a few mates, and then when I came back I went to Weston and did art, foundation and music. And then after that I decided that music was what I wanted to do. That was kind of the deciding year. I thought art's cool, I don't really know what I didn't really have an obvious kind of route to go forward with the art. I wasn't quite sure. I hadn't really, I wasn't compelled to do one thing with art, but music was definitely something which I thought it's just a no-brainer because I love it so much. And yeah, I remember my parents saying, just find something you love and that will keep you going,
You mentioned
yeah.
You mentioned you're going on to study at Weston College in the early 2000s. I kind of wanted to pick up on that, because you went to Weston College and then went on to the Brighton Institute of Modern Music. I wanted to just ask you what you learned from your musical education. And also you were kind of mentored by a soul singer called Carleen Anderson. I kind of just wanted to talk about the relationship with her and what you learned from that kind of experience of working with her.
There was a band in Bristol, some lads who were in a band at the same time called Fortune Drive, and one of the guys in the band was her son. So there was a Bristol link to her, and I didn't know him. I mean, we knew each other, but I was just such a huge fan of hers. And at the time, at BIM, I was working with a guy called Ben Castle, who's a horn player, but he's also an incredible composer and arranger. And he knew Carleen, he played in her band. So there was a kind of a few different links to sorry. Sorry, just digging into a second.
Sorry, apologies.
That's okay. Yeah, so yeah, basically there was a few different ways that I kind of came across our paths crossed. And she was one of the main reasons that I wanted to go to BIM, actually, because I was just such a big fan. And yeah, it was incredible. It was amazing, just because the numbers were quite small. It was like 11, 12 people in a class. And yeah, just getting to walk along the beach, go and be taught, to do the thing that I really love by someone like her. She's like world-class singing. Like, she's got like a proper cult following. She's pretty, I mean, in certain circles, people that are real music appreciators and people who know, do you know what I mean? And it's probably really, it's just one of those things in life, isn't it? It's like there are lots of people who fully deserve in every way to be household names and successful on every level, you know, whether that just be success from a personal point of view and a spiritual point of view, but also, you know, monetary success. And I don't know if she'd want all that. I don't know. She's a very humble person, and she definitely knows what success is. You know, she does what she loves, and she's just a really, she's very inspiring as a person. As far as having people to look up to who are on this creative, like, musical journey, she's definitely been through everything you could possibly go through in the music industry, and she's still incredibly humble and just got the most immense talent still, you know. So yeah, I can't really say enough good stuff about her, really. We're not really in touch anymore, apart from just on social media, of course. We say hi from time to time, but yeah, it's really cool to see what she's doing and follow everything that she's doing still.
I wanted to talk about the early part of your musical journey. And at the very beginning, you were a backing vocalist for Ronan, Keating and Enrique and Iglesias. And I just wanted to tell you how that sort of opportunity came about, and just tell us about your memories of touring with them and the places you performed.
Yeah, it was wicked. It was that year that I was studying at BIM, and Ronan Keating, he sponsored the college. There was some link, and he put an advert out, or his manager, saying that he needed a backing singer to come on tour and to fill in. And I think they wanted to give a student some work experience. And I wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't have said I was a huge Ronan Keating fan particularly. It wasn't really the kind of music that I was listening to at all, in fact. But I didn't dislike it, but I just thought, okay, it sounded like a wicked opportunity. And I kind of went to BIM with this perspective of just having an open mind to stuff, you know, and just going to try and experience new things, because it costs a lot of money to go, and I had to properly scrimp and scrape and borrow money from my gran and try and get funding to go there. So I wanted to I was excited to be there, so I wanted to try stuff. And so I had to get a demo made, which I didn't have, and have some photos taken and all that stuff, which is pretty, like, I looked like a newsreader in those photographs. We went up to the Downs and stood by the suspension bridge, which at the time felt like a good backdrop, and I looked so stupid, but anyway. And so I got chosen, which is amazing, and I was really excited. I was just so pleased to be going and doing something that was, like, we were performing in front of 20,000 people, like, at this festival in Sweden, and going, getting picked up in cars and have everything laid on, and doing television stuff, and had to mime on, like, German television, and I'd never mimed before. I was like, what? Like, okay, this is how this whole thing works. And I was like, okay. So it was a steep learning curve, but it was amazing. I loved it, and I was getting paid to do it. And I was like, this is awesome. It was like getting paid to do work experience, and just, like, get a taste of what it's like in the industry, even if it's not anywhere near what I want to be doing myself. I felt like it was, there was stuff to be gained out of it, and yeah, definitely learned a lot. And then the same with the Enrique stuff. So off the back of that, I got an agent just to do backing vocal stuff, through a mate, through one of the other singers, actually. She said, oh, you should come and do some more stuff. And so yeah, and same sort of thing with Enrique. It was just a real laugh. It was just really good fun the whole time. And we turned on the Christmas lights on Oxford Street, which was just the most incredible sight to see. Sit on the stage and look down Oxford Street both ways and see just thousands of people. And but yeah, the dance moves were pretty embarrassing to do these horrendous dance moves. Anyway, yeah.
You mentioned earlier on in our conversation, you mentioned the jazz saxophonist Ben Castle, who worked with Jamie Cullum as well. I just wanted to ask you how you originally met, and just about your working relationships, because he assisted you in releasing your first 3 EPs. And I just wanted to talk about, a little bit about those EPs, and then obviously going on to eventually record your first solo album.
Yeah. So I met Ben when I was in Brighton. He was working with a really great producer and keyboard player called Mark Edwards. And they both came to see me sing at an open mic night. And I went and did some singing on Ben's album, first of all. And then we started collaborating and writing together. And he's a really great writer. He's got, like, he's kind of one of those, he thinks about music in a way I never think about music. Like, he knows all the theory. Like, he's a proper session musician as well. Like, he used to practice every day, like when he was studying for hours and hours. When I first met him, he was still practicing like eight hours a day or something, and I was just like, okay. But he knew stuff. He was on a different level to what I knew. I didn't have any theory or any real understanding about how harmonies worked or chord progressions and how to build a song. Songwriting for me at that point was writing at my kitchen table after having a few glasses of wine, and that's fine as well. But he brought this whole other. There's this cover we did of "Be My Baby," the Ronan song, and it's just all harmonies. And he came up with all those harmonies, and I just still listen to it and just think, oh, that's cool. Like his input, that was all his input basically, and I really love those harmonies. It's really stripped back and bare, and then so he wrote those 2 EPs with me, and we were kind of like a songwriting team for a while. And he basically helped me. He was with me when I signed to the Universal, and we went through all that process together, which was fantastic. It was great to have support and have somebody to help me. And I had a manager as well at that point as well. I got a manager and an accountant, a lawyer, and those other people. But he was just my mate. He was somebody who was, well, he was more than my mate. He was my boyfriend. He was my boyfriend, but he was a friend, is what I mean. We were together for a while, quite a few years. But just having a friend and somebody that's in the same world as you and knows how to navigate that a little bit was fantastic, and we knew how to work together. So that was great. Yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
The process of obviously recording those 3 EPs and then obviously releasing them and getting them out to an audience, was that a question of kind of releasing them yourselves, or was there a kind of record label on board at that point?
We did the first 2 EPs we did just the 2 of us, with our own funding. I'm just trying to think how we funded them. Actually, they weren't. I mean, it wasn't like today where you need, you could upload stuff to the internet and get it out there. But to really be effective, to have some support, some financial support for the promotion, and to have somebody helping place the track in different playlists and get it in front of the right people, costs a lot of money still. But that was fine. I wasn't doing it at all for that reason. I wasn't thinking, how many people do I want to reach with these EPs? We just recorded them, and Ben had a studio in his house. So we just did it really, really simply. And we knew a load of awesome musicians. Ben knew loads of musicians, and I knew some great musicians in Bristol. So those two EPs at the beginning were really easy. And when I signed to the label, they took those 2 EPs as well, and kind of they were included in the deal, and they helped promote those as well. So it all worked out.
Before we talk about the release of the debut album and obviously signing to a big recording label, I wanted to carry on talking about collaborations with other musicians. And I kind of wanted to talk about working with the band Crowded House. You provide backing vocals for the song Transit Lounge, for the album Time on Earth. But as a songwriter yourself, was Neil Finn's songs an influence in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember having a couple of the chord songbooks, his album, the Crowded House album. My older brother, I've got 2 older brothers, and the older one, Matt, used to play guitar all the time, all the Crowded House songs. And he had, he had a whole load of songbooks basically. And so when I was learning to play guitar, those were the books that I was trying to play all those songs. So I grew up knowing all the Crowded House songs, well, a lot of them, and it was quite amazing. Yeah, it was definitely, we were at Rack Studio recording the album, my first album, and they were in the studio down the corridor, which was incredible. And we got to know them quite well. And then they said, do you want to come sing a vocal part on one of our songs. And I thought, great, that'd be awesome. I'd love that. I was trying to play it cool, like I'd like that. But it was awesome. Yeah, it was really great. And then they invited me to go and do some festivals with them, and I played Hyde Park and a couple of other really big festivals in Ireland as well. So yeah, it was awesome. There was a whole period of time just where the album was being recorded and it was being developed, and there were lots of cool things like that, like serendipitous things where you just be in the right place at the right time, and then you end up collaborating with people. And yeah, it was wicked. I definitely, yeah.
We go back now to around about 2007, 2008, and the recording of your debut album, Little Dreamer.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask about the process of recording the album, the songs written and performed on it,
yeah,
and how the actual kind of record deal came about.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna reach down and grab my charger a minute. Sorry, this is a bit of an impromptu having to
No problem.
Use my phone. Get over me 2 minutes. I think the album was one of those I don't know. Yeah, it had been in the pipeline for a while. So after recording those 2 EPs, sorry, excuse me one moment, I had all these songs which I was really keen to. Didn't really know how. Didn't really know whether they were right to go on an album, or whether they were the right collection of songs to all go together. So we had to work quite a while, and the deal with the label that was with it was a development deal, so that sounded really great, so you could have time to figure all that stuff out. So yeah, it took a long time, and they gave me a really long time actually to get it right. And it's quite a mixture. I mean, it's still quite a mixture of different genres on there. There's blues and jazz and a pop, and there's kind of like this unintentional reggae version of a Bob Dylan song, which, that was the last minute addition, which you just think, yeah, just do it. I mean, I wasn't trying to change the world with this album or anything. It was just a collection of songs that I really loved, and I thought it was awesome. I mean, I'm very proud of it for sure, even though there's things immediately that I would have changed. It's really funny whenever I record something, I immediately want to go in and change lots of stuff about it. But yeah, I was grateful that I could take that time to actually work through that creative process.
That was going to be my next question. When you look back now, in hindsight, 13 years later, at the success, the critical success and commercial success of the album, when you listen to it back now, are you kind of happy with the finished work? And is it kind of the album you're most proud of, or have you been more proud of kind of other stuff you've recorded since?
It's like looking back at a photo of you when you're younger, and you kind of cringe a bit and you see all the things you would do differently. But at the time, I was I was having so much fun. I was with the most important, not the most important, but one of the things that always sticks out in my memory, that I was just with people that I really enjoyed being with, and we were all doing the thing we loved. And that was, whether the songs, like, I wasn't being critical, I wasn't critiquing the songs and trying to think that wasn't the, I had to enjoy the music for sure, which is why I think when I left the label, that was the one sign that I wasn't really, the label, what they wanted and what I wanted weren't necessarily quite as matched up as they were. And I just stopped enjoying the music. So up until that point, though, the criteria was, I always just felt really lucky that I was able to do something I loved, and I was very appreciative being in that moment and making sure that I was, being in the moment. Do you know what I mean? And so looking back at it, there's definitely things I would change, and I'm very embarrassed about, and very make me cringe and just think, oh my gosh, why did I do that? But then, whatever, like, I don't sit and dwell on it and just think, I'm not embarrassed by it, because that's, that's just part of the journey. And this album that I've just done, I'd say, because it was so recent, it was 2019, so that's the one where I kind of wanted to do some of the things I didn't do on the first album that I wished I had, and then just experiment a lot more with a harder sound. Just create some of those sounds in atmospheres that I hadn't done before, but I'd always quite fancied doing. There's a lot, the dynamics of that album are a lot bigger. It's a lot more intimate, but then really hard and a lot louder with the whole band. So yeah, I'm definitely proud of this last album because it's, but again, I just think as long as my criteria is just be as honest and true as you can in that moment, and then it's gone, and it's not your responsibility anymore. I don't have to worry about it once it's out.
You say about living in the moment, but from obviously the success of that album, you appeared on a number of television programs, from Top of the Pops to Parkinson, This Morning, GMTV, the kind of list goes on. But my question was, do you enjoy performing live music on television? And do you think the exposure from it has introduced your music to like a wider audience or new audiences?
Yeah, I remember, like, if you can get on a TV show, it's just such awesome exposure, and it's just such a great platform for you to show people what you're like as a person, as well as just the music. Except till that point, they're making their own judgments, and unless some people really like doing interviews and don't mind, especially now, social media. Because when that first album came out, there was no social media thing to contend with. Excuse me, that's a new thing. So I'm having to. It makes me feel so old, and it's just like, in fact, my niece, who's she's almost 17 actually, but when she was about 15 and she was getting into Instagram and everything, she actually offered to be my Instagram. She basically said, if you just tell me what to do, I'll do it for you. And then she said, and my cut is, and she basically wanted me to give her. She's very business savvy. My niece, she was like, yeah, I'll do it for a cut.
Shrewd lady, yeah.
Very shrewd. I was like, well, I'm not making much money at the moment, love, but do the work up front and I'll pay you later, which she seemed happy about. But yeah, that was a whole other element which wasn't around when I was first doing, that first album. I don't mind it. I don't mind, I enjoy talking one-on-one with people. And I'm just like, I've got, when you feel like you haven't got anything to hide particularly, so like I'm happy to answer people's questions. There are definitely some subjects which are emotional and quite, bring back memories of, because when I was younger, it was all yet to happen, and I was 20 experienced teen, so relatively old, mid-20s when all that first happened, and now I had my 40th birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, what? How has that happened? But because I'm stuck at 28. 28 is my age where I can't quite progress past 28, even with a 2-year-old. Even with a 2-year-old, I'm still stuck at 28. And having to ask my older sister whether I can wear stuff as a 40-year-old. She's like, yeah, you can.
I share the same sentiment. I share the same sentiment. I was like yourself, 40 this year, and you just forget how time just goes quickly, doesn't it? So quickly. Yeah, 20 years just flies by. So yeah. It's very scary.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but it's funny because looking back at moving to London and doing music, and sorry, I'm just trying to get I don't want the phone to run out. I moved to London to do work, and I was there for quite a long time, but I really enjoyed it. I was gigging. I've not ever stopped making music, and I started doing other backing. I carried on doing backing vocals just as a way of earning money, and because the creative process wasn't guaranteed. I never wrote songs by a certain point, so in the downtimes I was doing other singing work, which kept things fresh and kept me out in the world of music, and being around other musicians, and so that was really good. That was important to me.
You've recorded tracks for two films, The Edge of Love and An Education. I just wanted you to talk about the songs you recorded for those films, and how does the process of scoring a song for a film differs to writing a song for an album?
I think the main difference is that it's not about you, as in when you're writing for your own music, it's all about your own criteria, and you're the boss, so you get to make all the decisions. You can decide, whereas you don't quite have so much freedom, even though you're being asked because they want whatever it is that you do, or there's a brief, which is a very different process. So there's a few things you have to consider off the bat, and then your own creative process will come in. The freedom to do what you want comes a little bit later on, and you have to check in with them and make sure that it fits in with what they want as well. So it just means that the team is working in a team. But I guess because I was used to working with Ben, I quite enjoy working with other people. So it's not that big of a jump to work with a bigger team. It's just putting on a slightly different hat, but I loved it. Those two films were I thought they were awesome. Especially Edge of Love. I really liked that. And Education was good as well. They were both great films. But working with Angelo Badalamenti for the score, he wrote all the music for Edge of Love, and I was a huge Twin Peaks fan. Me and Ben binge watched Twin Peaks, so we were big fans. And getting to work with him and get to know him was fantastic. He's awesome. He was a good guy. It's very encouraging to me, which was, that was wicked. It's a pretty big deal for me.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about the songwriting process, just about how you go about writing your material and where kind of the inspiration comes from for the songs you write. Does it come from kind of like real life experiences, things that have happened in your life, people you've met? Where do you kind of get your ideas and inspiration from?
So I think probably real life experiences, different challenges and processes that you have to go through to figure stuff out, and writing about how you figure it out. And I like there to be an element of hope, I guess, in songs. Like old gospel and blues music I love, because it manages that kind of genre manages to get stuck into the nitty gritty of life's challenges, but then there's generally some element of hope. There's like old gospel singers, there's a real like I don't know, there's an energy, there's a power, and there's like a real like unapologetic joy, and like you can tell that the reason that they're singing is not for the approval of of most people. Like they're singing for something else, like their agenda, and their goal is to sing to something bigger than them, and in worship, and in whatever it is that they're singing about is on another level, and it always just made me feel so hopeful and joyful. And I'd listen to that music and think, oh, that's how I should feel when I come out of church. Oh, I wonder why I don't feel like that when I come out of church. Like, when you watch that Aretha Franklin documentary, it's on Netflix at the moment. I remember seeing that at the Watershed in Bristol and standing up and applauding at the end and being like, why is everyone else not stood up? Like, this is like the most incredible thing that we're seeing here. Like, this is what church should be like. People should leave feeling like this. The energy was cool. It was a really special thing.
Over the course of your career, you've done so many different things. You perform with Burt Bacharach, you've supported major artists from David Gray to Tom Baxter. We mentioned you've worked with Crowded House, Ronan Keating. You've released albums, performed on various television shows. But what would you say has been your career highlight to date, and what are your musical plans for the future?
Maybe that's a good question. Well, it's interesting. There's different there have been different goals that I've had at different times in my life where I thought, I'd love to do that, I'd love to do that. When I was younger, I used to always want to sing at the Albert Hall, and I did that with the band when I was touring with Jules Holland. That was pretty awesome. The sound in there, as far as venues that I performed at, that's probably one of, if not the best venue, because the sound in there was just, it's just like another world. It was so perfect, like the acoustics and just the sound on stage, and just singing in that space is like another, it's like you go to a different planet for a moment. That was a pretty cool moment. And my dad had come, my parents don't live in England, they live in a little village in Spain, and they'd come over to see us, to see me and my brother. And I don't know, my mum wasn't able to be there. I think her sister was unwell, or there was some reason why they both couldn't be there, but my dad was there. And I remember my mum had sent me some flowers in our dressing room beforehand, saying how sorry she was she couldn't be there. And it was a really amazing moment to like just to have my dad there. And it was gutting that my mum couldn't be there, but it was one of those moments where I just thought, I remember this, because it's just such an epic venue. It's just such a beautiful venue to sing in. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like I think that's probably one of the memorable ones, which I remember has happened more recently, you know.
What would you say long-term musical plans, particularly with the release of the new album that you mentioned?
Yeah, so I took a bit of time out. So my little boy Sid is 2.5, and because my husband, or basically he's an actor, so we both got these unreliable jobs that when it's really busy, like months of busyness, and then creating or waiting for audition, waiting for jobs, and then COVID happened. So that was kind of a good timing for me in a sense, if it was going to happen, because I was on maternity leave and I was in between writing albums. But it's definitely a challenge because it's like the age-old story where Liam's earning capacity is definitely in the short term better than mine. Like if I go on tour, I'll break even, and then I make money from it, but it's not enough for Liam to say, I'll stay at home with Sid for 6 months. I'm not going to be able to earn that much in 6 months. I've got to build it back up again because I've taken time off. So which means that I've got I'm the stay-at-home mum for a while, which I'm totally happy to do. But anybody that's been through this, especially women, I guess, because and musicians, because it's such a part of your identity in your world, suddenly when you have a kid, just gets so small. Whereas before there was no blinkers whatsoever. Me and Liam were both off doing stuff constantly, and there was no routine, and now there's solid routine. So it's been a bit of a learning curve getting used to that, and not one that I've particularly enjoyed, even though I love my little boy. And but in each day there's moments of extreme joy and like mind blown by this little human and how lucky we are to have him. But then also it's just such a U-turn from the life that both of us knew before. But I have, like, over lockdown, I didn't really respond creatively in lockdown. I didn't feel like doing anything creative. It was actually a really nice break, and I just felt like it was like being given permission to just stop for a while. And I feel like our experience of it was it turns out me and Liam actually get on quite well because we didn't kill each other over lockdown, and we got to know Sid, obviously, get to be a family for the first time together. So I mean, I know it was so horrendous for so many people, so we felt really lucky. We've got a little garden and our little neighborhood, there's lots of young families around, and it actually brought our community together amazingly. Like, we know all our neighbors so well now, so there are lots of benefits, even though it was such a horrendous nightmare for so many people, but this new project I've got coming out is just completely stripped back again, just me and guitar. It happened just because I was doodling around every morning playing just old lullabies and some old gospel tunes, and I decided, after having a conversation with Rob, who's a guitar player friend, that we should just record some stuff together. So that's what we did. And so there's going to be some singles, and then there's like 12 songs, and we're just going to put them out as and when. and I'm working with a label service company, and I've got my own label. So again, like I was saying before, I'm not casting the net wide. I've not got a big label with loads of funds. I'm doing it purely because I'm re-engaging with that whole creative process again. And I'm really happy to be putting something out, because it's been a long old time since I even wanted to or had any energy to even think about music, because Sid is just also all consuming, you know.
When do we get the chance to listen to the album or buy the album?
So in the new year, they're gonna start coming out, the singles. It was going to be before Christmas, but then I had some support dates. I was going to be doing some tour dates with Madeleine Peru on her UK tour, which have had to be postponed till next year. So we thought, you know what, there were some awesome venues on that tour she's doing, like London Palladium, and so I was really gutted that got cancelled. But they are going to be happening next year, which would be great. But they were just really great promo. Like London Palladium holds a lot of people, so that was we were going to tie it in nicely. So I was like, I remember this. I remember the music industry where everything just changes, where you work tirelessly for months and then everything just stops. Something happens, you just have to adapt. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. So, luckily those 20 years of experience, those years that I've had kicked in, and I was like, okay, have a day being depressed and then roll your sleeves up and get on with it. And so it's going to happen in January. And there's already a few gigs booked. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back out there, and we've got parent-in-laws on standby to come and help if Liam unexpectedly gets a job and has to go away for 6 months somewhere, which happens. Yeah.
Beth Rowley, we come to the final set of questions. These are 12 questions that we ask all guests on your take. We kind of ask you things you like, things you don't like, things you're passionate about. So here are the final 12 quick questions to wrap up the interview. So
go for it.
Question number 1, what would you say is your favorite pastime?
I think probably baking. I've got like the sweetest tooth in the world. So if I have a free couple of hours, my default thing to do is go into the kitchen and make something sweet that I can then sit on my own and eat. Basically, I used to do it all the time. I don't do it so much anymore, but yeah.
We move on to films now, and we've kind of touched a little bit on that, but what's your favorite film and why?
I don't know. I don't even know. What film springs to mind even? But that's such a hard question. I think probably something like, it depends what sort of mood I'm in. It's such a hard question. I really love that film True Romance because it's got elements of the whole spectrum of emotion. It's really tender and it's really raw and gritty. It's really innocent, and yeah, that one for me is definitely up there.
Good choice.
Slightly unusual film. Yeah.
From films, I was going to ask you, who's your favorite novelist?
Let me think. Probably just trying to think who I've read recently. A novel, who I would pick. Oh, these questions, you know what? You did send these questions before and I scanned over them and thought, that's okay, I'll be okay on the moment. I'll be okay in the, just thinking off the top of my head. Let me just think. I've got some by my bed, actually. Let me have a little look. Sorry. This is typical, isn't it?
I always find it hard, but like if somebody says to me a favourite film, I've got like 20 favourite films. I find it hard to pick them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just looking to see which ones I've got out. Let me think. Favorite novelist. I mean, to be honest, I'm thinking back to my earlier years when I had time to read. I actually started to listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks because I didn't have time to sit and read anymore. I used to just read a lot of like sci-fi, like weird. I remember reading a book. I think it wasn't Wilbur Smith. It was somebody. Basically, there was a book called, probably one of the best books that enjoyed reading was a book called, it sounds hilarious, it's like an old sci-fi book called Spider World, which is basically about how these alien spiders come to Earth and take over the world. And I just remember, and there's this this guy called Neil who has to basically create this world underground and try and defeat the spiders, and it's just the best escapism. I remember loving it. I remember just thinking, but the description, I'm just trying to think of the guy's name. It's so frustrating because I read it when I was younger. But as far as books that spring to my mind, that's the one that me and my brother always talk about it because I recommend it to my brother and he loved it as well. Anyway, I'm just trying to think of the guy's name.
If you could have had a different profession, what would it have been?
Maybe I like work with kids or something. I mean, now I've got one of my own. I'm so grateful for him to go to his childminder. So I don't know if I could have, I don't know if I could do it full time, but maybe something that allows you to work with kids, and there's something about that innocence or the elderly, like either end of the spectrum. You know, I've always enjoyed hanging out with my parents' friends. There's something about the beginning and the latter years of life where you have that childlike innocence. It kind of disappears throughout the middle, but kids have it and then older people have it. So I'd have a job that enabled me to hang out with those those people more.
Who in life would you say has been your greatest inspiration?
I don't know, probably my parents, I guess. And I think of them as kind of one person. They do everything together. Yeah, like when I was a kid, when I was growing up, we got on really well. I didn't really have to do that. I didn't really do that whole rebellion thing because I was just like they would just be really straight with me. And if I wanted to listen, I did. And they would just say, well, we're going to trust you to do this, do it or don't do it, and I was like, all right, fair enough. So we always got on really well, and they're good people and they're very open-minded and very kind to people. Yeah, so I think my mum and dad.
Do you read a newspaper, and if so, which one?
No, I don't read a newspaper. I read maybe the showbiz page on the Metro if I'm on the tube, just to pass the time, or the Guardian online, or probably Channel 4 News. And Jon Snow was on. He's one of my favourite newsreaders. I like him. He's very lefty. I like him.
We've moved from newspapers to food. What would you say is your favourite food?
I reckon steak. I reckon a nice, either a fillet steak or we grew up in my house. There was a local butcher's that we used to call Happy Cows, and they were quite expensive, but it was a nice treat, and it got all our family together. Steak Friday. Although we don't really eat much steak nowadays. It's a real treat thing. Actually, we actually don't eat much steak at all anymore, which is a shame because I love it. But it's very much a treat thing. But not good for the environment. I know, but it's funny. You just associate things with your childhood,
Nothing better than a steak. I'm with you there. Next one. Who would you say is your favourite cultural icon?
I don't know. I remember reading Nelson Mandela's book, which was a rare thing for me. I'm not, as I was saying before, I don't sit around reading as much as what I'd like to at all anymore. But my dad read, a book. Just the journey and his story was amazing. And I remember thinking, yes, I like that. What he stands for is good. He's, putting his money where his mouth is. And yeah, I remember being inspired by that.
I'll allow you to say it. What is your favourite curse word and why?
I think it's probably just fuck, to be honest. Mainly when I'm driving. I don't ever say it, particularly in my daily life. I've got some friends that probably swear every sentence. It's just part of their vocabulary. I save it, and probably when I'm driving, especially around Easton, because the roads are so narrow and people are just in such a rush, and I have to do like a daily meditation, to let people out, to say thank you, and to try and combat the constant, like, I probably say it several times when I'm driving, especially I'm trying not to because Sid is picking up, obviously now he's old enough to, but yeah, that's a favorite one of mine.
What would you say is your favorite place or holiday destination?
I really like walking in Wales. That's something me and my brother, John is a big walker. He used to love going up into the Brecons, and I reluctantly went with him for quite a while, but looking back, some of my happiest times. And so just going and hanging out and going to the beach, going over to Pembrokeshire, and you feel like you're abroad when you're over there. The beaches are so beautiful.
And now the final two questions. Firstly, what would you say is your greatest achievement to date?
I'll be really boring and say probably Sid, my little boy, because it's the most, like, even pursuing something you love creatively, which is definitely a roller coaster over the years. The hard work levels of having a kid are they're on a par. They're a lot on their, it's full on, definitely. So I think he's definitely an achievement. It's an achievement that I'm still there. I haven't just said, bye Liam, I've got to go. It's pretty hard work, but he's amazing. Yeah.
And
he's awesome.
lastly, Beth Rowley, how do you wish to be remembered?
God, these questions are so hard. They're so what do I want to be remembered for? I don't know, that all my answers just feel so boring. Being kind. I don't know, just being, I think maybe being, I don't know, there's so many different things that come into my head. Just being true to the moment, being honest and as kind as you can be in the moment, and owning up to mistakes you make and apologizing to people when you need to. I don't know, all of those things. I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Quite a nice note to end on. Beth Rowley, thank you for being a guest on Your Take. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the very best with the release of the new album for next year. Thank you very much. Awesome. Thank you so much, James. And lastly, how do we find out a bit more about your music online? Yeah, so my website is being updated, but Instagram and Facebook, I try and do that as much as I can. I'm not one of these, if I've not got anything to say, I don't keep the algorithms happy, I'm afraid. So it takes a while to build it back up again. When something's happening, I post a lot about it. And when there's nothing much happening, I don't post pictures of my breakfast or anything. So yeah, you'll know when some stuff's happening. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time and all the best. Thanks so much. Bye.